has returned for 2 races only. Simon Wills on pole position alongside the young gun, Rick Kelly, Stuart McColl and Chris Stark off the second row of the grid. Now, Emerson Newton-John is a scratching. The nephew of Australia's own Olivia Newton-John had a big crash in practice this morning. He won't be taking part in this race.
And the cars come round to complete their warm-up lap now. Position number 9 is Peter Hill, Paul Stevenson, Ian Peters, Rowan Carrick, and, as Rusty mentioned before, Christian Murchison, and shuffled to the back of the grid. That car was underweight yesterday by 5 kilograms, I understand, so he's got a bit of work to do, but we'll keep a keen interest on what he's up to, because he'll have pace and no doubt come through the field. In qualifying yesterday, his time was a 1:21.944. He was a second away from Simon Wills, who just seems to be unbeatable in this category.
We'll watch for Murcho off the back of the grid. At the moment, he lies 3rd in the championship. He's a point behind Stuart McColl in 2nd and 16 adrift of young Rick Kelly, who you see to the right of your screen there. In the Birrana Racing entry, red lights on, your pole sitter in the blue car to the left. That is the reigning champion, Simon Wills. And we're away. Good start by Simon Wills. Kelly trying to stay in touch with him, but Wills has certainly gotten the jump. And look at that, a horrible start up the very back of the field there for Murchison, so rotten luck.
Well, it's bad enough when you get shuffled to the back of the grid, but it gets even uglier when you give the field that kind of a head start. And look at the gap already that Wills enjoys as he heads to the top of Wakefield Street, and you can see that these cars so low, so stiff, so little suspension movement, and they jump and bounce on a street circuit. They literally come off the deck. And ride is the big issue here. I mean, these cars function basically as an aeroplane, if you like. They're an aerodynamic device. And when they run on a smooth circuit, you can think about them in aero terms, but when they run on a place like this, ride control is critical.
Some people mightn't recall, but you've actually enjoyed success here in a Formula Holden. Back in 1990, you won the race here on the longer Grand Prix track. You've also driven a V8 supercar here. Maybe talk about some of the fundamental differences. What are they? I mean, they are diametrically opposed, aren't they?
Oh, look at this battle here. Geez, you like reminding a bloke how old he is, Rusty. Thanks for that. I think life was black and white back then. It wasn't even colour when I drove here in the Formula Holden. No, it was a fantastic category, and these cars are very exciting to drive. They're very quick, short braking distances. They're a slick shod car, big wings on the cars, so they glue to the road, and relative to a V8 supercar around here, chalk and cheese. Quicker, obviously.
Around about 5 to 6 seconds, I think, per lap quicker than a V8 supercar. And a big change to the category this year as well. They have changed the new Yokohama control tyre, so a lot of guys coming to grips with it. Simon Wills struggled a little bit when he tested the car very recently, but found form during Friday practice, really came to grips with the car and is back where he left off last season. This is a bit of a case of unfinished business on the streets of Adelaide for Simon Wills, as we continue to see Chris Stark in car 74, the aqua and yellow entry, under siege there from clear ahead. Murchison at the moment lies in 9th position, a staggering 11.5 seconds behind Simon Wills, so with a lot of work to do.
And just going back to that point you were making, Greg, in the differences between racing car types, these cars are very, very different to drive. First of all, obviously, no roof, so much cooler. You feel the effects of the wind buffeting. And they have tiny little screens just in front of the cockpit there, which just deflects the air over your head, but you still have your helmet catching in the wind. And you'll see these guys, you saw them then on the Brabham Straight, just their heads wobbling around, and the cars are incredibly stiff by comparison. But they're fabulous to drive. They're like an extension of your arms and legs, if you like. You can just get on with the mental job of racing. The car's built and designed for motor racing. It's not a production item. This thing's whole life is about motor racing. You start with a clean sheet of paper and you draw up something you'd like. And of course, what these cars start their lives out as is Formula 3000 cars. Reynard dominates this field. Reynard's been the biggest, I guess you could describe them, production racing car manufacturer in the world. In other words, you or I can go and buy cars. They run in the Formula 3000 Championship. They're, of course, in Champ Car Racing. Ooh, look at this battle here.
Clearahan's fallen off the back of this battle, but young Alan Gurr in the orange and black entry is doing a terrific job. The 18-year-old from New South Wales, ex-go-karter, spent the bulk of last season in a Ford Super Tourer and has jumped into a Formula Holden. This is only his 2nd round ever in a Wings and Slicks car. So the youngster doing a terrific job.
These vehicles teach you a lot about setup. They're typically very sensitive cars because not only is the suspension stiff on them, but the actual monocoque is extremely stiff as well. When you make changes, you get an effect. So that they'll teach a driver a lot about the way in which the motor car behaves, and they'll teach you a lot about your own limits as well. You know, when you're whistling down here 250-odd kilometres an hour, there's Peter Hill, you've got to really test your mettle in terms of choosing braking distances. The brake distances are foreshortened dramatically by comparison to a touring car. So these guys will be braking well inside the 100-metre mark. It's a coordination exercise as well, because these cars are not like a Formula One car where you've got gear shift paddles behind the steering wheel. You've still got a gear lever. Some of them sequential, some of them are an H pattern. You've got to get on the picks, get the car slowed down, not over-rev the engine, and these engines are Holden V6 3.8-litre fuel-injected power plants, rev limited, generally sort of produce in the order, I guess, it might have snuck up a bit since my day, but it's probably in the order of about 350 horsepower.
Dr. Roger Oakeshott there in 9th position, just one in behind Peter Hill. Peter Hill, incidentally, had some drive belt problems during the course of qualifying. That's what put the reigning Silver Star champion further down the order. He had a shunt in practice as well, so they've done a terrific job to get that M111 racing car fixed and back in action. Right now, Simon Wills is leading the way from young Rick Kelly, and Wills has pulled out a staggering 4.7 seconds. Here's the progress of Christian Murchison. Keep in mind, he started off the very back of the grid. I tipped the scales yesterday on that car. It was 5 kilos under the 675 kilo minimum weight, so Christian was quite puzzled. I don't quite know what went wrong there. Perhaps the team may have miscalculated how much fuel should have been in it, and perhaps he's a little lighter than when he tipped the scales the last time himself. Oh!
Big turn in oversteer just behind the old pit area, and big error.
Big error by Terry Clearahan, I think that was, and that's allowed Murchison to get past him. So Murchison from the rear is now up into 6th position. Keep in mind, this guy is running 3rd in the championship. Stuart McColl is just 1 point ahead of him in terms of the series. McColl lies 3rd on the track at the moment. Another lap down on this fabulous Adelaide circuit. You can see the way the cars really move around. You started to talk about that before. There's Murchison's teammate. He is out. That's McColl. That's rotten luck for Stuart McColl. He was in 3rd position at the time that happened. His day is over.
Greg, one of the interesting things that this category has produced over the years is a lot of star names. And some of the names in this category at the moment are probably unfamiliar to our viewers, but they'll be familiar names in the not-too-distant future. If you run through the roll call of successful Formula Holden competitors over the last decade or so, there's some extraordinary names in there, not least of which and this just moves me to a point about Scott Dixon. First day of practice yesterday at Long Beach for the Champ cars, and Scotty has moved up. We saw him run very well in Formula Holden and Indy Lights. He's the reigning Indy Lights champion, and he's going to, let me see, I'm just looking down the list, he's wound up 16th after the first day of practice at Long Beach. So, and this, of course, is one of the key points to this category, and not only can it be a springboard to establishing a professional career in, say, touring car racing in Australia, but get it right, and it may well propel you overseas.
You talked about looking down the roll call. I mean, you look at the guys in the V8 supercars here this weekend. The Holden Racing team alone, both of their drivers, Jason Wright and Mark Skate, former champions in this category. Oh, we've got a problem here for Simon Wills. Look at that back wheel, Neil.
Broken left rear suspension.
The rear left.
Massive problem there.
He's gone, and that has allowed Rick Kelly to take the lead. So our championship leader, more valuable points for him. But that is hard luck for Simon Wills, who's only stepped back into this category, as we mentioned at the beginning of the race, for 2 rounds. He's competing here on the streets of Adelaide and in Darwin, which is the next round of the championship. And I guess that presents a whole new range of problems and issues for these guys, because it's the first time they've ever ventured to the Hidden Valley circuit.
That's right, and very long straight, so you've got to make your mind up. If you want to pull wing off the car to make straight line speed, that's one thing, but then of course you've got to get round the corners round the back, and they're pretty tight at Darwin. It's also very hot and humid, and these cars will behave differently in those kinds of conditions.
Just keeping an eye on the progress here.
See, one of the things that is unusual in the way in which you have to set these cars up, Greg, is that you've got to make decisions between your geometric and your mechanical setup of the car and your aerodynamic setup of the car. You can make the thing a rocket in a straight line. You can pull the wing down, take the gurney flaps and the little lips that are on the backs of the wings off the car and rocket along in a straight line, but you may not be able to get round the corners. We saw Kelly there in strife, locking up the front right just over the bumps at the top of Wakefield Street. So it's always a balance. You've got to figure out what you want from your car and what best suits your combination.
Just trying to get an idea for you. We believe that Christian Murchison may be slowing somewhere on the track, and that would put both he and his teammate Chris Stark, who we saw before, out of this race at the moment. Stuart McColl still remains in second.
Yeah, there's Murcho.
There he is.
Perched on the pit straight, not too far from our commentary point, in fact. So that's a very disappointing outcome for him.
So a hard end to the opening race in round 2 of the Formula Holden Australian Drivers Championship. Both of those entries, his teammate Chris Stark, we saw parked on the side of the road before, they are out. Both the Hocking Motorsport cars.
Yellow flag being displayed in that area, and it's just warning oncoming competitors. There's one at the scene and there's one further back exiting the final corner. Here's our leader. You'll see the yellow. There it is. It's just to the right of his car as he makes his way down pit straight. Exercise some caution. Absolutely forbidden to overtake another car.
What an enormous talent this guy is here. I mean, you talked about names unfamiliar to some of our viewers at home. This kid, Rick Kelly, is 18 years of age. Last year, he finished runner-up in the Australian Formula 4 Championship, was a real star there. Big things expected of him in this category this season, and he's the brother of Todd Kelly, who's qualified 3rd fastest today after the shootout for the Clipsal 500.
Must be something in the water in the household.
In Mildura there. Stuart McColl retains 2nd position at the moment. Gurr has moved up into 3rd position. That's a good effort from him. He had some dramas. It's only his 2nd round ever. It was only 6/10 off the pace in the opening practice session, but got caught in a little bit of debris from Emerson Newton-John's crash, and that damaged his brake lines, which pushed him down the order in qualifying, but he's fighting his way back. Alan Gurr right now sits in 3rd.
You can see some damage to the left front wing end plate of Stuart McColl's car there. You're quite graphically able to see that under brakes at the end of the Brabham Straight.
Young guy with tremendous potential, Stuart McColl. Formula 4 driver from New South Wales. Has had a lot of experience in go-karts and has stepped up to Formula Holden. He sits in 2nd position right now in the streets of Adelaide. Rick Kelly leads the way, Alan Gurr in 3rd. Clearahan is 4th. We go further back through the field. Rowan Carrick sits in 8th. What an amazing race this is. So many retirements very early. But right now, Rick Kelly leads the way. And we'll be back with more in just a few moments. Back on the streets of Adelaide, we're watching race leader Rick Kelly. This is round 2 of the Holden Australian Drivers Championship. He leads by 3.7 seconds, so he continues to extend over McColl. A little bit of damage going with the front wing end plate on his car. This car, Greg, just looks a little bit happier around here. I mean, they all look like they'd be pretty stiff to ride in and knock your rib cage around, knock the fillings out of your teeth. But this car in particular in 2nd, and that's the gap 1st to 2nd. You see it's just jumping around, certainly not behaving in the front nearly as well as the leader's car. So the fact that the margin is actually that close is probably something of a testament to McColl's driving. He's pushing very hard to stay in touch. 4 laps remaining in this one. This is the 2nd of 2 entries from the NRC racing team. These guys also campaign a car in the Conica Series for Dale Breed, who drove for them last season. The sister car to this one was to be campaigned by Emerson Newton-John this weekend, the nephew of Australia's own Olivia Newton-John, but he had quite a heavy crash during the course of this morning's warm-up, and that has put Emerson, a colourful character who resides in America, but has decided to come out and spend a year in Australia developing some open-wheeler experience on Wings and Slicks cars, and unfortunately he's out today. 3 laps remaining in this one.
McColl just had the rear of the car locked up a little bit under brakes that time going into the final corner. Still just slightly losing in this battle, dropped a 10th on that lap to Kelly. And I'd say in terms of pushing hard and determination, he's giving away nothing, but the behaviour of the car is just not quite to his liking. And sometimes it's very, very difficult to be able to trim a car in limited practice time and get the sweet spot that you're looking for. Clearly, when you come to a street circuit, we've got a car off the road here, Carrick at 49. This is the final corner. You can see the pit entry there to the right. It's very difficult sometimes to just find exactly what you're looking for, Rusty, given that you've got so little time. Ooh, how'd you like to be sitting there?
Yeah, that's not good. This is not a happy hunting ground for Rowan Carrick. Had some dramas yesterday in the course of of practice as well, some gearbox damage. Gee, we've had some retirements. Carrick is out now. We also hear from the pits that Terry Clearahan has been basically, I guess, black flag for some smoke dramas, and we'll go through the other retirements in a moment. Here is Carrick going off.
Yeah, just locked the rears for some reason. May have wrong slotted and got the wrong gear, or might have just ended up with the brake balance not quite right and stopped the rear tyres. Whatever, it has stopped him and he's turned around. I think he's actually now managed to rejoin.
Gee, there's been a lot of retirements, though. Christian Murchison, the guy who was running third in this championship, is out. Paul Stevenson, the reigning Formula 3 champion, didn't even make the start of the race. He had some problems. Emerson Newton-John, who we mentioned, another non-starter. Chris Stark is out, and Simon Wills, the reigning champion, was out with that damaged right rear suspension. Alan Gurr doing a good job in third position, the youngster from New South Wales. A lot of youngsters doing well here. Rick Kelly, the 18-year-old from Mildura, in a team that basically has its roots well and truly established here in South Australia, and a team that, if you want to do well in Formula Holden, most look to these guys. Birrana Racing as the benchmark, Neil.
That's right. Malcolm Ramsey has been a very staunch supporter of the category for many years now. 2 laps to run, by the way, and without his support it probably would have gone nowhere in recent times. But he's done a great job of fostering new talent and drumming up interest in the category and keeping it alive. It's actually quite difficult, Greg, in other categories in Australia to live in the shadow of V8 supercar. The touring car heritage here and the growth of the sport is so strong in recent years that it's actually quite difficult for other categories, but you've got to get your new young drivers from somewhere. This is one of them. We've got 1 lap to go. They have to learn their craft, and they've either got to use it to realise their international aspirations, or perhaps to get involved in V8 supercar.
Well, you talked briefly about Scott Dixon there before, who's doing terrific things in the Kart World Series. What about the likes of Matthew Halliday, who was actually competing here last year on the streets of Adelaide? He's running a Toyota Atlantic this weekend at Long Beach, and young Steve Owen also has stepped up to Indy Light. So these are guys that have both had good experience in Formula Holden. As you say, they've taken that on board and they've used it to take the next step in their career. But this is Rick Kelly, and on course to extend his championship lead. It was a gap of 15 points coming into this round.
So he had a look to his right there as he came out of the turn and noticed that Will's car has just perched off to the side. So it's been a pretty comfortable exercise for Kelly, really. His margin's now 4.9 seconds, so he's just continued to ease away, hasn't made any blues. The car's behaving well, so his win is the sum of a simple equation.
Also a good job by the team as well. They've obviously got the right compromise set up. Neil talked before about how stiffly sprung these cars are, and over the bumps around the streets of Adelaide, you've got to get a bit of compromise in the setup. But Rick Kelly has done a terrific job. He brings it down to the Mistral hairpin for the final time. And the man who leads the championship extends the lead. Rick Kelly takes out race 1 in round 2 of the Formula Holden Australian Drivers Championship. Good job by the young New South Welshman Stuart McCall, home in 2nd for the NRC International team. And Alan Gurr, despite those dramas there, he will finish in 3rd position. He's quite a distance away from both Kelly and McCall. In the end, the gap between Kelly and McCall was 5.7 seconds. So as the race wore on, that difference in setup between those guys, Kelly was able to extend the lead. There's Peter Hill in 4th position, the guy who last year won what they call the Silver Star Championship, and he's battled his way into 4th position. So that's a good performance from him. 3 young guys, all under 20, or just around the 20 to 21 year bracket, finishing in the top 3. That's quite incredible, and just the sort of young talent that we've got. So Gurr brings it across the start-finish line. There's Peter Hill. And of course, a lot of the highlights from these races, and tomorrow's race in particular, you can see coming up on trackside in the not-too-distant future.
Pretty unusual race, really, Greg, when you consider the number of people that had trouble. It's quite extraordinary, but street circuit racing is a little unique in the demands on the car, and it beats them around. Hard on transmission, hard on the suspension, curbing, lots of bumps. Even just coming up here in Wakefield Street, just in the braking area here alone, these cars just pound.
Well, there's Roger Oakeshott there. We can see him even at a very slow pace, the way the car moves around.
You can see the proximity of the floor to the road. It's a very low ride height. So Rick Kelly is the winner with a margin of 5.7 seconds over Stewie McCall. Alan Gurr in 3rd, then Peter Hill, Roger Oakeshott, Ian Peters, Rowan Carrick and Terry Clearahan. That's your Shell Helix race score for Formula Holden. And we'll be back with more in just a moment.